Well, it's all about protecting the children. There was a big Supreme Court case about 15 years ago, something called the Communications Decency Act came through Congress and was eventually overturned in a unanimous Supreme Court decision in what I view as a vindication of First Amendment rights. Both political forces want to regulate in the names of these very motherhood-sounding concepts. With the right, it's all about protecting the children from content that they shouldn't see. And now for the left, it's fairness and justice. I'm very concerned about both of those trends. I think they both have tremendous problems.
All right, let's, for the sake of putting up these two sides and making it real, let's take a look at the organizations that are kind of lining up on both sides of this battle. And this really falls to the FCC and to Congress, what they're going to do. So I want to get into that for a second. There's an organization called freepress.net. Now this is a left-leaning organization. Would that be the right way to put it?
I don't think they would want to characterize themselves.
How would they characterize
Just
themselves?
a free speech advocate, media reform advocate.
Right. Here's what they say about it. They say that high-speed internet is fast becoming a basic public necessity, just like water or electricity, to protect free-flowing internet access for everyone. Americans need to get involved with this right now. So they see this as a utility. Would that be the right way to put it? That this is like the sewer system, the water system, the electrical system, that we all have a right because it's one utility and it's called the internet, and we should do it.
Yeah, I think the perspective there is that a democracy, this experiment of a democracy, requires this fourth estate, requires media, and media has changed over the years, and the way that our communities get information and the way that our electorate gets informed has changed and shifted, and is primarily, is more and more becoming via the internet, that information that they access. And they want to make sure that, like in the early days where we subsidized, newspapers being distributed through the U.S. Postal Service, they want to make sure that people have free access to that information and as unbridled as possible access to the information they need to be participatory members of a, then you have, a democracy.
Some of the folks on the business side. The Wall Street Journal, let me give you an op-ed this is 3 years old. Brett Swanson wrote that each year the original content on the world's radio, cable, and broadcast television channels adds up to about 75 petabytes of data, and the current estimates are correct. The 2-year-old YouTube streams that much data in about 3 months. Now this is 3 years old. So the fact is that YouTube is streaming so much more
things in perspective
than what broadcast was doing. What is he trying to tell us there?
Well, that the internet is becoming the people's primary source of information. And I think you would agree that because it's become, it's basically how people find out about the world, how they keep in touch with their family, how they keep in touch with their friends. It really has become this connecting network that renders distance at least less important, if not completely irrelevant. That was really the promise of the internet when it first happened, when it first sort of really came on the scene. So it's a tremendous force, I believe a force for good, but I'm very worried about the potential for regulation, the potential for it to be subject to political pressures, which in my opinion are largely pernicious, as opposed to market pressures, which I believe are largely beneficial.
Right. Before we get ourselves really wonked out here, and before everybody turns to reruns of Star Trek, let me pull this in.
I like Star Trek.
Of course you like Star Trek. You're a geek.
How did you know? Right.
This is an issue that is huge for business, and it's huge for free speech, and it kind of overlaps, which is one of the reasons the Independence Institute next Wednesday is putting on an event. I really suggest you go to independenceinstitute.org. We've got 2 of the FCC commissioners in town for a lunch event, and we'd love for you to come. That's going to be this Wednesday, the 26th. So check out our website. We'd love for you to come and be there. That's a real pleasure to do that. But the issue at hand is, should the people who invested into the infrastructure control the infrastructure, or should the people who benefit from using that infrastructure? Is it now a utility? It used to be that phone service was something that only the elite had, and now it's a utility. That's why Qwest has to do certain things that the other companies don't have to do. Why shouldn't this be a utility as well? Shouldn't everybody have the same right to access to get onto the internet and have their stuff delivered at the same speed as everybody else? Why should that be different?
Yeah, well, I think the answer is no, and it's important that people understand that there's no such thing as a right to broadband, there's no such thing as a right to information, there's no such thing as right to anything at someone else's expense, in my opinion. But at the very least, there's no right to broadband. If that were true, then the United States was essentially a population of rightless individuals 20 years ago when nobody had broadband. What people are really talking about is an entitlement. There's some sort of belief that once enough people get it and it obtains some sort of critical mass, then everyone has a right to it. So aside from that, the morality of that particular view, which I personally reject, the consequences of that view, you're going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. The thing that makes broadband possible and internet possible is the profit motive, is the free market, is capitalism, it's private property. All those kind of things are extremely important. And if you begin to regulate it in the way that the FCC and net neutrality advocates are proposing, he who pays the piper is going to call the tune. It is not simply a matter, regulation is not simply a matter of fine-tuning things and say, well, we're just going to do this little thing here, we're just going to do this little thing here. There are enormous unintended consequences that will remain with us for decades to come if the camel gets its toe in the tent at this point.
Let me bring it over here. Now, if Verizon or Comcast or AT&T or whoever laid these lines, put in the infrastructure, developed the technologies, they're the ones who own the equipment, why should government have the right to say, yeah, that's nice that you put that together, and it's great that your stockholders put in all that investment and now you're looking for it back, but we're going to tell you what you can run through your own pipes. These are my pipes, I own them, and you're telling me that I have to charge my customers all the same or give them the same service if I don't want to. This is my shop. Why? What gives government the right to say you have to run your private business the way we say?
Well, I mean, there is the argument that these pipes are laid through public rights of way. They're all, they're using public utility poles or public roads, and that, that there are social expenses involved in having them laid. But the other argument is just that the structure, the design of those corporations is to maximize profits, and if we consider this, they don't support a democracy. It's not their job. It's their job to maximize their profits, and no one should fault them for that. But if governments didn't require build out to low-income communities, then there wouldn't be the profit motive there to make sure that low-income communities have internet access or have telephone access, for that matter. So I think that the argument is that in a democracy, if we want a democracy to work, we have to regulate the primary, means of social communication to include everyone, to be democratic and not be a plutocracy or an aristocracy.
But is it Comcast's job to worry about democracy? Why is it anti-democratic for a private company to run its own equipment? I mean, bring it over here. What's wrong with that argument?
Well, so one of the things where I disagree about with Tony is that it's precisely capitalism and markets that are the most beneficial to lower income people. The best way to help lower income people is for them to have their goods and services get better and cheaper every day, every month, every year. We agree, I think, that lower income people have tremendous problems and there are tremendous equities in American society. But failure to achieve broadband access quickly is not one of them. It's precisely because the internet is as unregulated and because the business is so competitive inherently that's what broadband penetration, that's what it made it happen. So I disagree with Tony when he says that without capitalism and if we had only capitalism and
in other words, it's that nasty profit motive that brings broadband to as many places as possible.
In my judgment, absolutely. Now there are lots of other issues that are associated with being a low income that we could talk about some other time. But so I vehemently disagree with Tony's contention about that regard.
Let's put together the players on the battlefield.
Sure.
So on one side you've got these ISPs, the internet service providers. We own the pipes. We're talking about AT&T, Verizon, Comcast, I imagine Quest, companies like that. On the other side, you also have companies. Is it Microsoft, Vonage, eBay, those type of companies that say, listen, my customers come through those pipes, therefore we want to be able to jump on those pipes whenever we want. Are those the right? I've heard Google is on the pro net neutrality side and Yahoo. Why would they be on that side of the argument?